Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today we have the long-awaited Tier 8 Premium American Battleship, the Tennessee Import, to review for you guys today. The Tennessee is what I'm hoping is, well, a less suckish version of the California. I'm hoping it's actually good, unlike the California, in my humble opinion. Oh, what's really cool about the Tennessee is that this ship, you can potentially get it for free by partaking in the Battle of Leyte Gulf event that is going on in the Army. I'll show you guys real quick how to get that going. So you go over here, go to the Battle of Leyte Gulf event, click on the adventure, and you start down here with the first chain of missions. Click unlock that. There you go. Missions should pop up in your missions section in your port. And then you just got to work your way through, here they are, work your way through the events to get your, work your way through the missions to get your Leyte tokens. And then the final reward for progressing all the way through that event is this here Tier 8 American Battleship. If you are in a bit of a rush, you can purchase her outright in the armory in the Battle of Leyte Gulf section right down here in an Admiral pack for $98. She does come with all of these goodies: a commander with 10 skill points, another port slot, 2.5 million credits, 250,000 Elite Commander XP, bunch of signal flags, and a decent amount of the green economic bonuses, and then a 200% buff to the earnings of, I believe, the Tennessee for, how long is it? Does it say? Oh, I'm just going to check out the combat missions real quick. But anyway, yeah, the standard, Admiral pack stuff that you get when you drop, decent chunk of change on a premium ship. So, yeah, there you go. Yeah, so you got to be playing the Tennessee, you get 200% buff to your various XPs and such. All right, but the Tennessee, yep, she is out now. If you are impatient, I would obviously, whatever way you choose to, well, not whatever way you choose, but whether or not you choose to get the Tennessee or not, if you are going to pick her up, I, of course, highly encourage you to pick her up in the event for free. So let's go ahead and take a look at her here in port, go over her stats and features. But before we do that, absolutely massive shout out to the channel's Patreon supporters, which of course make this ship review and all ship reviews possible here on the channel. I'm not part of the CC program, so I do not get these ships for free. I do have to purchase them with the very generous funds donated by the Patreon supporters, or of course the ad revenue that the channel does generate. So besides watching the videos and streams, supporting the channel on Patreon is the best place to do so. So let us take a look at the Tennessee. So she is a full-on Tier 8 premium ship, so you get the Tier 8 economic bonus package, which is a 5% buff to your credits, and then a 50% buff to your various XPs. You do also get the baked-in economic bonus of not having to pay the full price to rearm and repair your ship after battle, so that gives you another boost to your earnings. As far as the camouflage goes, the camouflage that it comes with just in the Admiral pack is what you see right on here. Again, nice to see that it's natural camo and not simply gray, as we've been getting with some premium ships here recently. But yeah, pretty standard American battleship camouflage as it should be. Alright, so the ship herself now, her armor, you get a 32mm bow, 32mm bow deck, mid deck is 32 as well, side plating is 32, superstructure is 19, a little bit of superstructure right down there. It's the pedestal that the A mounts are sitting on. The side armor that is the torpedo blister is 35mm thick, which that you'd be surprised how much that will save you. I can imagine, that's a giant middle finger. That's a giant middle finger actually to even the Yamato's shells, because it can overmatch that. So that's pretty interesting. Stern armor is 32 as well. You get a nice little semi-icebreaker stern there that's 203mm thick. I can see that bouncing some shells or potentially arming some big shells if you catch it at the right angle. Turret faces are 457mm thick. Cheeks are 254. Sides are 229. Tops are 127. Backplate is 229 as well. Her citadel is probably, I would imagine, very buried, if I'm remembering from the California. Yeah, it's pretty deep down in there. Yep. way submerged Citadel. You are not getting at that unless some really funky stuff happens. Maybe through the, well, I don't know, because you have this on top of it as well. You have this 140 millimeter casemate armor, then 165 millimeter casemate armor. So, yeah, that's pretty chunky. Then you got that on top of it. So, yeah, that's a really well protected Citadel. I do not think you're getting to that, because even if you do somehow get a clear shot at it, I mean, it's well below the water, and you have this massive 35 millimeter torpedo blister to get through, and a decent bit of space armor. So, I doubt you could regularly Citadel it exceptionally so. All right, HP, yeah, 59,000 HP at tier 8, 35% torpedo damage reduction. I thought that'd be higher with the massive torpedo blisters that she does have. For reference, the Massachusetts has 66,300 HP, so less HP than your typical tier 8. Well, just mass is 66. Alabama, where is you? There it is, 63. Constellation, which is a battle cruiser, also 63. So yeah, you're low on HP by tier 8 standards, but again, that 35 millimeter torpedo blister is probably going to put in some work. And you get 4x3 14-inch guns with cruiser dispersion. Look at that. Look at that number right there. 172 meters is its maximum dispersion at 20 kilometers. That is great. That is this whole ship's thing, right? It's got cruiser dispersion and battleship guns. Now, they are 14-inch guns at tier 8, so you're not really overmatching much, but I can, just my God, the shells are going to go where you tell them to go. And they have a 28-second base reload time, which is very, very nice indeed. What else? So, HE 5,000 is your maximum HE damage. 30% fire chance with those HE shells. 59 millimeters of HE pen. 861 meters a second is the initial HE velocity. AP, you do not get the Mark 8 super heavy AP shells. You get the Mark 16 AP shells that do 10,500 maximum damage and has an initial velocity of 823 meters a second. So while, yeah, you don't have the super heavy AP, it's going to be a lot easier to get these shells to connect at range thanks to the, well, normal speed. Because the Mark 8 super heavy AP, go back to the Massachusetts with her 16-inch shells, 701 meters a second coming out of the Massachusetts guns. So they are just jogging compared to the Tennessee shells. So that is nice indeed. You do have 8x2, 107 millimeter secondary guns, 6-second reload time, 6.6 kilometer is the maximum range on those guns. Definitely not something you want to secondary build with those parameters. By comparison, West Virginia 44, who has the exact same guns with the module, 7.9 kilometer range, reload time 2.4 seconds. So yeah, definitely not what you want to do with the Tennessee. She's most definitely a main battery battleship. These are really here just for the AA. All right. Speaking of AA, airstrike, if you're wondering, 2 attacks at 10 kilometers. Standard American depth charges, I am assuming. You get 43 single-mounted 20mm Oerlikon guns because post-Pearl Harbor, U.S. Navy really doesn't like planes. You get 10 of the quad-mounted 40mm Bofors and their gloriousness, so that is quite nice. That's 40 Bofors right there. And then, of course, the 16 5-inch guns are also dual-purpose. With an AA range of 5.8 kilometers, continuous damage of 304, your flak does 1,540 damage, and a 35% sector reinforcement. Maneuverability, she is stuck at a top speed of 20 knots. That is my one big concern about the ship. We'll see how she does in battle, but that is just tortoise by tier 8 standards. I know the Kansas goes that slow too, but the Kansas has 16-inch guns at tier 8. So let me just double check. I'm 9% sure she goes 20, maybe 22. Never mind, 23 knots. Wow. So yeah, again, absolute tortoise of a ship here, but we'll see how that works. Consume to 14.1 kilometers space before I put any skills or modules on the ship. For her consumables, you get spotter or fighter, DFAA, and then a hill, which regenerates 294 HP per second. Does get a very quick cooldown time of 40 seconds with a runtime of 28 seconds, 4 charges of that base. And then a 20-second action time on your damage con, the nice American damage con with an 80-second cooldown time. Alright, fellas, I'm going to go ahead and put a module and commander build on the Tennessee, and then I will meet you guys back here in port. Alrighty, fellas. Starting out with the modules, we went with main armaments mod 1 because, well, this ship is all about the main battery guns. So obviously, we want them to stick around. And this reduces the chance of them becoming incapacitated by 20%, increases their survivability by 50%, and then reduces their repair time if they do get knocked out by another 20%. Damage con mod 1 because fires suck and they do damage to your ship, so any chance we have to reduce the chance of the fires occurring, we'll take it. So this reduces your fire chance by 5% and your risk of flooding by another 3%. And then went ahead and took Artillery Plotting Room mod 1 as the special American battleship module for, well, American battleships, because I'm not really sure what else I would take. I mean, maybe the Traverse mod, but like, the turrets already rotate in, well, 48 seconds. That is long, but with the playstyle of the ship, I don't think it'll really be a big issue. So if it is, I'll swap them out. But you get a 16% buff to the firing range of the main battery guns, along with a 5% buff to the secondary guns firing range and a 5% buff to the secondary battery dispersion. So considering this is a ship that's meant to snipe, more range couldn't really hurt. And then Damage Con mod 2, again, fires suck, so this module reduces the time the fires will be active on our ship. So when our Damage Con is down, that is damage, that is health that is being removed from the ship, so the shorter that fire burns, the better, along with flooding as well. And then finally, I took Consumables Systems mod 1, which gives us a 10% buff to the ship's detectability. Considering that this is going to be a very slow Tier 8 ship, I would imagine the concealment is going to be our saving grace, so we want to have the best concealment possible. Better concealment lets you control your engagement because you can simply go dark if you don't want anyone to see you. Unless it's a CV or a sub around, or a DD around, obviously, so yeah. Alright, and for the commander, I do have Halsey on here. He's got my usual battleship, survivability tank build on him. So, took preventative maintenance to reduce the chance of our, main battery guns, our modules, and all that jazz from becoming incapacitated. So this gives us another 30% buff to the risk of our modules becoming incapacitated, plus a 15% buff to our secondary and AA guns. So engine's going to stick around if it gets knocked out as well. Just going to work at a reduced rate. Same with the steering gears. And then, of course, Grease the Gears. Halsey has an improved Grease the Gears skill, where he gets a 25% buff to the rotation speed of the main battery guns, so that is most helpful here. Drill and Rush, I don't see why everyone in the game doesn't take this, because you get a quicker reload when you lose HP, which you inevitably will, because it's a combat game, right? So this gives us a 0.2% buff to the reload time of all of our armaments per 1% of HP that we lose. And then basics of survivability, because, well, fires suck. This reduces the burn time of fires and the run time of floods by 15%. Also increases our module restoration time by another 15%. Emergency Repair Expert, so we get an additional charge of our heal. The heal runs for 10% longer now. The longer the heal runs, the more healing gets done. We also get, we would get an additional charge of the Damage Con, but the American battleships do not get the Soviet battleship Damage Con, but it does increase the runtime by 10%. So we get that already long, nice American Damage Con running another 2 seconds for a total of 22 seconds. And for those 22 seconds, no fires nor floods can be set upon thine ship. So, yes. And then Concealment Expert for another 10% buff to our concealment rating. Again, being able to go undetected is a big up. Right? And then lastly, Fire Prevention Expert, because yet again, dear viewers, fires do suck. This reduces the chance of us catching on fire by 10% overall and reduces the number of fires that can be set on the ship from 4 down to 3. 4 fires on a ship, I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, but it doth suck. That prevents that from happening. So, after all of that, none of that should have changed. The artillery now, we have a maximum range of 23.4 kilometers, which is decently far by, Tier 8 and Tier 10 standards. But we will keep the spotter plane just in case. I don't think anything else here should have changed besides the turret rotation speed, which is now down to 48 seconds. Maneuverability with the speed flag is up to a blazing fast 21.5 knots. Our concealment's down to, oh my god, 11.4 kilometers. I was thinking it was going to be like 12, right? 12.3. But 11.4, that is just nigh undetectable. That is very nice. Okay, that's definitely going to be the saving grace here with the Tennessee. So, guys, I'm going to go ahead and take the Tennessee into battle, and I'll meet you guys there on a voiceover review. All right, fellas, voiceover Sealord here, and oh my god. It has been quite some time since I've considered that something this consistently accurate might be handed over to us Battleship players in World of Warships. And my god, they were not joking when they said cruiser dispersion on the Tennessee. It really is. The amount of times I've completely deleted darn near full health destroyers in one salvo when they try to rush me, because it's like, oh look, it's a big fat stupid battleship, you know, it's the Tennessee, it's a dreadnought, I can rush it. Nope. No, you cannot if the guns are loaded and pointed in your general direction. So that was quite refreshing, and you can do this anytime you've got, you know, a destroyer rushing you, any cruiser broadside that isn't among the tankiest tier 10 cruisers. You can pretty much one slap them if you've got their side from, you know, within like 13 kilometers, because the dispersion really is that good. And that is, yeah, that's a pretty darn strong attribute to have on a battleship. You know, the shells actually go where you point at. And you battleship players out there should know that we get a little used to the aiming at the enemy ship and just going, yeah, around there's good. The dispersion is going to take care of the rest, because, you know, it's not like a cruiser, or, you know, cruiser like the Sevastopol or the Siegfried, where the guns are accurate enough to where you can imagine the shell hitting a particular portion of the ship. With most battleships outside of like the Slava and the Bungo, when you have the plane up, you're kind of just deciding the general-ish area where you want your shells to go and hoping that they'll hit something important along the way, especially at range. Now, of course, like at closer ranges, again, with some of the more accurate battleships, you can do this. But with the Tennessee, you can pretty much do this at almost every range, with the exception of like maximum range. And from my experience, the dispersion is really consistent, because a lot of times we'll get these battleships that are supposedly, you know, accurate long-range snipers, but they still get, you know, these inconsistent salvos every now and then. Not with the Tennessee. With all the shots I was taking this evening playing the Tennessee, I had maybe two that were kind of wonky. The rest were really nice, tight, and consistent. Which 14-inch guns, yes, they are small by tier 8 and above standards. You're not really overmatching much of anything besides destroyers, light cruisers, and the occasionally, you know, oddly armored heavy cruiser. But my god, they still hurt. You know, if you show this ship broadside and you are unfortunate enough to be, you know, in their crosshairs, you're gonna get hurt, and it's gonna hurt a lot, you know. Obviously too, like I said, without the ability to overmatch, you know, like a 16-inch gun would at tier 8 on up. Yes, there are situations where if the ship is angled, your shells are obviously going to ricochet more. But, I mean, the broadsides more than pay off for it when they goof up and go broadside, or they're forced to maneuver and go broadside. The other redeeming factor about the Tennessee when it comes to its guns is that HE is a lot more viable than other battleships. Most other battleships, like, you actually have pretty decent HE fire chances on most BB shells. The issue is that, again, with battleship dispersion, half of those shells tend to go in the water instead of going to the ship that you're shooting at. Not with the Tennessee. It's completely viable to when you are just not getting, you know, the right angles or broadsides. You can just swap to HE and you'll probably do perfectly fine. In fact, you are going to have to do that in a lot of cases because, again, tier 10 battleship armor, your 14-inch guns can't really overmatch too much of that outside the superstructure. So once that's saturated, and don't get me wrong, you can 100% get these shells to consistently go into that superstructure if you're good enough with aiming until it is saturated, and then you do, of course, swap over to the HE and just try to start some fires. because of course, like Russian battleships, they go bow in. A lot of larger cruisers, they're going to sit angled, right? So obviously load HE and burn them down, and it's perfectly viable to do that in the Tennessee, especially with the 28-second reload time on those 14-inch guns. So yes, the guns are amazing. If you know how to aim, it is a deletion machine for most cruisers that slip up and show you broadside. You're going to chunk the ever-living crap out of most battleships. Tier 9 to 10 battleships broadsides, I was doing like 18k a salvo, 20k plus when you get some citadels, right, which it's 14-inch shells. Yeah, it's small of a battleship caliber at that tier, but still a big old shell, right? It's going to find the citadel if you have a vulnerable citadel, right? So yes, guns are absolutely amazing. The downside, you're playing a dreadnought at tier 8. And it's not like, again, the Vermont line where they have a little bit more speed and, some better attributes. This is a true on, it's the California from tier 7. And if you remember my California review, or anytime I am unfortunately required to remember playing the California, that is not a fun ship to play at tier 8 because the guns aren't all that accurate. The Arizona's better, one tier lower, and it's still slow as hell. This thing is absolutely slow as hell, and you're a tier up at tier 8. Everything has at least like an 8-knot advantage on you, right? And think about all the times we talk about tier 8 battleships, and we're like, oh man, it only goes 28 or 26 knots. That's pretty slow. Yeah, okay, outside like the Kansas, right? But most of everything else has at least an 8-knot advantage on you. So you are slow as hell, which means you definitely need to be paying attention to the map, watching how the game is flowing, and making decisions 3 steps ahead of everybody else. Because if you need to go to the other side of the map, you go 21.5 knots with a speed flag. You need to be doing that 2 minutes before everyone else realizes they need to do that, So you definitely have to have good map awareness and good situational awareness, just like when you are grinding through the Colorado. So if you have grinded up to the Montana, this shouldn't really be a foreign concept for you, but you should definitely be making sure you are being cognizant of your surroundings and how the match is flowing. And of course, too, the armor is a bit of a double-edged sword. The 35mm torpedo blisters, that is a giant middle finger to pretty much everything that you can see. They're not overpinning that. They're not overmatching that if you're angling right. Which, angling in from the bow, for the stern, getting those, angled in shots off, you will pretty much bounce whatever hits that torpedo protection, which is really nice. However, of course, if you're not angled, that's just a giant slab of your ship that pretty much every tier 8 battleship is going to be chunking the living crap out of. So while I wasn't getting citadeled in the Tennessee, there were times when I slipped up, someone caught my broadside and just removed a slab of HP, like 20k HP, off of my HP bar very, very easily because of that giant torpedo blister. Again, very much like the California, but of course, again, the armor thresholds have been increased because it is tier 8. But it is really tanky when you're angled, so that's great. Unfortunately, though, again, with it being a dreadnought and having huge superstructure like it does, you do get farmed down a lot by HE from cruisers and HE spamming battleships like the Conqueror and such. So you definitely need to be, again, aware of your surroundings, and hopefully not in a position where you can be abused too much by that. Oh yeah, SAP battleships, Italian battleships absolutely murder you, so be aware of that. And with the way that it's played, you shouldn't be that close anyway. This is very much a mid to long range battleship, not really meant to be played at close range unless you're pushing up and taking advantage of a flank and have tons of team support, and you're not the only one that the enemy has to shoot at. In those cases, yeah, you can definitely play it close, but it's definitely, again, a medium to long range battleship, and that's where it's best played. And with that 11.4 kilometer concealment, you can most definitely make it work. Because even though, yeah, the flank's fallen, if you can get out of there, at least start heading out of there in time, that good concealment should buy you enough time to be able to get, to your team, or at least near your team, to where you aren't the only thing that the enemy team has to shoot at. And I guess with that concealment as well, you can definitely do some sneaky moves and push up and get on some flanks where the enemy team is not expecting you to be. But again, if you are the lone battleship out, you're a slow tortoise, and the enemy team runs you down, you are going to get sunk, right? So you definitely need to be aware of that. The shells, oh yeah, they are very comfortable, like I thought in port at medium to long ranges. A lot more comfortable than the American AP that you find in the main line, and well, all the lines after Tier 8 use that Mark 8 Super Heavy AP shell. But, it's nice to have a shell that you can get to hit at range. What's really funny, in my first match, I was so used to, playing American battleships with the Mark 8 Super Heavy AP that I was consistently just overshooting the enemy ships, and I realized, oh, wait, yeah, I actually have to, lead them a little bit less, and, yep, the shells were definitely connecting. It was I, not the ship in my first couple of rounds in the Tennessee. So, yeah, it's slow, but I mean, that's what you're trading off to get these amazing guns on this battleship. So if you've played the Colorado and if you've grinded through the Colorado, you know what to expect here. So it shouldn't be too big of an issue. Now, obviously, in those matches where your team dies in 5 minutes, you are obviously going to be the one that's going to get murdered first, and it's going to be a very slow, very painful death by fire. Again, a la the Colorado experience. But you do have a bit better tool set here to help you out with the infinitely more consistent guns in the Colorado and with the excellent concealment that you get with the Tennessee. And if CVs do come around, I found the AA with DFAA was definitely more than enough to just go make them go away at least for a little bit. So you have that going for you as well. But yes, definitely a mid to long range sniper, and that's where it should be if you're consistently trying to push with it, which I don't think you can push because it only goes 21 knots, So yeah, but if you are a mid to long range battleship fella, this is most definitely a ship for you. So a numerical score for the Tennessee. I give the Tennessee a whopping 9 out of 10. Originally, it is an 8 out of 10 because of its characteristics and such, but ladies and gentlemen, this, may I remind you, is a free ship. You can get this ship just by doing the Leyte Gulf missions, and it's a good one. I know there's a stigma around free ships that Wargaming gives away that, they're usually crap. This is most definitely not one of them. If you are a mid to long range battleship player, it is an excellent ship. Even if you aren't a mid to long range battleship player, like playing a little bit closer, you can still play it for mid range. Again, it's not a brawler, but again, it's literally free. It's a free Tier 8 premium ship with a premium economy and some excellent guns where you can get a good consistent damage income. I was very much consistently getting like 150, 160k games in the Tennessee, and keep in mind, it's still, the patch just came out, so it's still, you got a little bit of them patch week games going on. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? And I was having no problem getting a nice consistent damage income with the Tennessee. The, of course, massive upsides being them 12, 14-inch guns. 28-second reload time, the frickin' cruiser dispersion on them, amazingly consistent guns, comfortable shells at those range, and again, those characteristics make the HE viable just as the AP. You get the absolutely amazing concealment of 11.4 kilometers when you build into it, which does help you out a whole hell of a lot. It's a nice thickly armored ship when you're angled, so you will be well protected in those situations. You get DFAA, the American, it's actually not the American Battleship Hill to my knowledge. It doesn't look like it from the stats. It does not have the improved icon, but you do get the American Damage Con, and you still get a heal, so I mean that is still a plus. It's not like it's a crappy heal anyway, so it's a good heal. What else for the positives? AA is good with DFAA. Oh, fighter and spotter. You can utilize the American mod, artillery plottering mod to give you the additional range, which you most definitely will need. I did keep that on. I did not swap out to the turret rotation mod because, again, at high tier games with how slow the ship is, obviously you have to play a little bit further away in order to have room to get out of there. The downsides being you are slow as hell. Again, 20 knot base top speed. You have a longer turret rotation time. I didn't really find it to be too much of a problem unless I was getting in some sticky situations, but again, with how you're playing the ship mostly, you are going to be just fine. And your superstructure is chunky. Armor, when you get caught broadside, it is incredibly chunky, so you do need to look out for that. But I mean, like, I guess you could say the 14-inch guns, they don't have the overmatching capabilities that you typically have on Tier 8 and plus battleships, but it is still a downside. It's not too much of a big downside for me because, again, of how accurate the guns are, but it is still definitely a downside. So, guys, that is my review of the Tennessee. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Are you planning on grinding through the missions to pick her on up, or are you just going to drop your credit card on the game and pick her up in the Admiral Pack? Again, I don't recommend doing that. Get this ship for free, fellas. Just play the missions, get it for free. That's what I highly encourage you guys to do. It is well worth the grind you have to put in for her. So guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and all of that jazz. Hope you guys have a wonderful Thursday, wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.